everyone. We are so excited to have you with us today. My name is Cassandra Lehman. I'm the president of Beacon Wealth Consultants, and we are excited to have you here to talk about how to prospect for 401k plans. And this is something that I have been fortunate to learn a lot about over the last few months. We're excited to share this with you also. And to do that, we have some guests with us. And first, we have Chad Hamilton. He is a CFP. He's the founder and president of Advisor Solutions 360. And Chad has over 20 years of experience in wealth management. He, besides being a CFP, is a chartered advisor in philanthropy. He's written a couple of books, Redefining Financial Freedom and Deep Wealth. And Chad's going to talk to us a little bit about the real opportunity that's out there for working with 401k plan owners. And also we have Hillary Sunderland. She's the Chief Investment Officer of Beacon Wealth Consultants. She has 13 years of investment management experience. She is a CFA. She's a certified Kingdom advisor. And she's going to go over some details about the Kingdom K and how that can be a real benefit to your Christian business owners who might be looking to do something different with their 401k. And we also have John Rice, and John has 17 years of qualified plan experience. He's an accredited investment fiduciary, a qualified plan financial consultant, and a qualified 401k administrator. So for those of you who are Kingdom Advisors members, QKA in this setting is the qualified 401k administrator. So we are really fortunate to have these folks with us today to help to educate us about how we can start to offer something new to our Christian business owner clients, or for you to start looking for new clients. So I'm going to start off by having, I'm inviting Chad to tell us a little bit more about this opportunity.
Thanks, Cassie. So there are a number of reasons why we put a lot of energy into building out this 401k plan offering, and why on a number of different levels we think it makes sense for you to offer to clients. But we also recognize that some or maybe most of you are not managing 401k plans on a regular basis and may need some help starting the conversation or positioning it. So that's how we want to help you today. And I just want to take a few minutes to give you a big picture rationale for why we think this makes so much sense. Fidelity's been surveying sponsors of qualified retirement plans for several years now, and they're trying to assess how plan sponsors and business owners feel about their current 401k plans and gauge whether they're interested in making a change. And the results show a pretty remarkable trend over a fairly short period of time. If you look at this chart here, on the left-hand side, on the first column there shows the results from 5 years ago. So back in 2013, when they asked business owners about their company 401k plans, 9% said they were looking to make a change. So, you know, a little under one out of 10. Now, if you move all the way to the right-hand side of this chart, it shows the results for last year. And in 2017, when they were asked the same question, the number of business owners actively looking to make a change increased to 38%. So the number more than quadrupled in a 5-year period. And you can see the upward trend is pretty consistently sloping year over year. The point is, there's never been a better time to talk with business owner clients about 401k plans, and because there's clearly a current of anxiety around their existing plans. And the next slide highlights some of the top reasons they cited for wanting to make a change. So the first reason, and Cassie, if you just want to, the first reason they cited was 37% mentioned personal liability. And not coincidentally, we see an increasing number of headlines around 401k plan lawsuits. And so business owners are anxious and wanting to reduce their own fiduciary responsibility. So in a few minutes, Hillary is going to talk in more detail about how the Kingdom K plan is designed specifically to address and alleviate their liability concerns. But if we look at the other two top concerns as well, so 27% said their company's grown and their plans become more complicated. And that's not surprising. I mean, anecdotally, when we talk with owners of small businesses, whether they have 5 employees or 50, the most common response we hear is they don't really know much about their plan. Oftentimes it's something they set up many years ago, haven't really had much time or energy, ability to focus on it. And so that intuitively makes sense. And then the last piece there, just over 1/4 plan sponsors said that the investment offering is another primary cause of dissatisfaction with their current plans. One observation I want to make with these concerns too is they're not disconnected. So if you think about audits and this, the concern for liability, the most common things that we've heard from those who have been audited, the first 2 things requested by auditors of qualified plans are an IPS and a fee benchmarking report. And what's interesting is neither of those documents are requirements of ERISA, right? So the 2 things that they want right out of the gates are not actually requirements. The reason why they're so important, though, is from an auditor standpoint, an investment policy statement and a fee benchmarking report. These are the types of things that reveal whether the plan has a clear process in place and whether that process is being adhered to. And also, is the plan sponsor aware of the competitive landscape and how their plan stacks up in terms of fees and investment selections? Now, look, we strongly believe that the Kingdom K is a great revenue generating opportunity for advisors, but let's just hypothetically take that off the table for a minute. Even if you had no revenue growth reason for having this conversation with clients, it's still a great way to add value and peace of mind for them. We're going to show you toward the end of the presentation a few different ways we can help to do a fee analysis, a side-by-side comparison. The point is, if nothing else, you help business owner clients with peace of mind to be better prepared in advance of a potential audit. If through this process we can help them with some due diligence on their existing plan and just help them get a better understanding of what they have in place now. There's one other reason to have the conversation as it pertains to investments within their 401k, and this next slide shows another theme here and on the investment side. In 2016, a company called Core Data Research surveyed nearly 1,000 defined contribution plan participants, and what they found was about 8 in 10 of them, that first column here, or the first row on this chart, consistently shows that around 80% of those surveyed said they'd like to have their investments reflect their values, and roughly 7 out of 10, the second row, said they'd like to see more SRI, broadly socially responsible, values-based investment options in their retirement plan. And there's no reason to think this isn't consistent for Christian investors as well. There was a recent study from the Christian Investment Forum that showed nearly 80% of Christian investors expressed interest as well in investing in faith-based funds. But what's interesting, so you get a lot of demand potentially, but there's not nearly as much supply. In fact, there's essentially no options up until now to do this values integration for Christian investors in their 401k plans, which is most people's largest asset. Now, I'll let Hillary speak to the screening process and methodology used in the Kingdom K, but I'll just say that one of the great features of this plan is that it offers plan participants a choice. So it's not all or nothing, where everyone needs to invest in BRI models or not. For those employees of a company who are not Christian or for whatever reason want to invest in more standard low-cost index funds, for example, they can do that. And others can incorporate faith-based screens and models into their strategy. So I think that the question, why not make clients aware of the ability to do this, to integrate BRI options into their 401k plans? And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hillary Sunderland, and she's going to get into more detail about the benefits of the Kingdom K.
Thanks, Chad. Nice to be with all of you this afternoon. So I'm going to start out just by talking a little bit about some of the benefits we offer and also give you a very high overview of the platform that we have. Certainly, if you have additional questions, we'll open that up at the end, or you can reach out to us after the call. We're going to start by talking a little bit about the compliance aspects of it, or fiduciary protection part. Employers, as many of you know, employers who sponsor a 401k plan are subject to the rules of ERISA, which is the federal law governing retirement plans. And ERISA requires a fiduciary to always act in the best interest of the plan participants and beneficiaries and to make prudent decisions. What happens is that many plan sponsors are actually taking on significant liability without even knowing it, because failing to properly manage a plan and its investments can result in fines, penalties, and personal financial liabilities for the plan sponsor. And one of the things that many plan sponsors don't know is that ERISA provides that a plan sponsor can delegate the significant responsibility and liability of selecting, monitoring, and replacing investments to someone known as a 338 investment manager. A 338 investment manager basically takes discretion, authority, and control of the plan's assets and assumes the legal responsibility for the decisions that it makes. And what this does is this allows the plan sponsor to manage and really mitigate their fiduciary risk, which is something else that came out in that Fidelity retirement plan study, is that many plan sponsors are looking to try to mitigate as much risk as possible, especially on this side of things. So the nice thing about the Kingdom K, first of all, is that Beacon Wealth Consultants, we act as a 338 investment manager for the Kingdom K platform, and therefore we're assuming the legal responsibility for the decisions that we make. And what it does is it allows the plan sponsors to really better manage and mitigate their fiduciary risk, which is appealing to many that are out there. So let's talk a little bit now about our actual fiduciary process. Chad mentioned that one of the things that an auditor would ask for if they were to ever audit the plan is the investment policy statement. So even though an IPS is not required for plans, we do provide one to each plan. We make this for all the plans under our Kingdom K platform, because using an investment policy statement not only helps a plan sponsor think through how best to fulfill their fiduciary obligations, it's also one of the most powerful tools available for protecting a plan sponsor against fiduciary liability. So an IPS does a few things. It formally sets forth the objectives, restrictions, and general investment structure for the management of the plan's assets. It also provides the basis for evaluating the plan's results, and it documents the process used to select and monitor the plan's investment selections. And so by providing you with this IPS, we are able to show to an auditor that all investment decisions were made with the skill and care that a prudent expert would have, and that we have a process that's also been consistently followed over time, which is also great if a plan were to ever be audited. The next thing I'm going to show you is the kind of what some of the benchmarking will look like. I'm not going to dive into this too much, but one of the things we're offering along with an investment policy statement as a 338 investment fiduciary is we're consistently monitoring all the investments available under the plan, and then we have an annual due diligence review kit. This is just a really brief snapshot of what it looks like, but basically what it does is it goes over each of the investment options in the plan and then ties it back to that investment policy statement, saying whether or not something passes or fails versus the investment policy statement, to really help provide a rationale for plan sponsors as to why we're keeping investments in the plan or why we may want to terminate an investment manager over time. So it's a really transparent look into our process, and a really great tool to have to show that a plan sponsor is doing all the due diligence required on the plan. And this is all done for you as part of the package. So it takes a lot of the responsibility off of not only the plan sponsor, but also off of the advisor as well. The advisor can focus more on maintaining that relationship and helping with servicing the Kingdom K offering, and we're doing all that back office legwork for you. So let me talk quickly then through the, basically we have 3 parts to Kingdom K. This is a very high level overview. So 401ks, we want to offer some options to the participants within the plan, because like Chad mentioned, just because a Christian business owner may want to offer biblically responsible portfolios or invest in them, we do, just because of how laws are written, we do need to offer employees the option to do non-BRI model portfolios, non-BRI investment options as well. So there's really 3 parts to this platform, and I'll talk through each of them briefly. The first is a suite of participant-directed options. We offer qualified default investment alternatives, which allows a plan participant just to opt in to an investment if they don't actually take the time to make an election. They'll be automatically selected into one of them. And then finally, the BRI model portfolio offering. So let's start just by looking a bit at the participant-directed options within the plan. So once you're on board with Kingdom K and the plan has an IPS, within the IPS, there's a section, you kind of see it on the picture there, that goes through how we look at underlying investment options for a retirement plan and how we're benchmarking each of those options. So we're looking at this at least quarterly, but on at least an annual basis. Again, the plan sponsor will receive a full due diligence kit outlining how each of the participant-directed options within the plan correspond to that investment policy statement. We offer participant-directed options across a variety of asset classes. Cassie, if you could advance the slide. Great, thank you. We offer all the major fixed income and equity asset classes as well as alternatives. So if a participant wants to just build their own model, they can do so. Most of the participant-directed options within the Kingdom K offering are passively managed funds. There are a few actively managed funds for asset classes where it makes a lot of sense to do so, but most of them are passive, which helps solve that active versus passive debate, because we have both options within a plan. We're not forcing someone to do one or the other. We're providing options. And also by having a lot of passive options within the plan, this substantially lowers the overall fees to the plan as well, because as you know, index funds are generally much cheaper than actively managed funds. So most of our participant-directed options are passive index funds across a variety of asset classes. We also offer qualified default investment alternatives, which is the next slide. The qualified default investment alternatives are target date funds, which are really fund of funds that utilize active management, whereby a participant opts in, and over time the target date fund becomes more conservative as the participant approaches retirement. The target date funds that we offer in our plan provide ongoing asset allocation, rebalancing, and investment management in a single fund. Participants are automatically enrolled based on their age. And finally, as I said earlier, the glide path adjusts over time as a participant approaches retirement. So these are really your 2 options for clients, or participants rather, that don't want to use biblically responsible investment models. They want to direct their own investments. They can either do so through an actively managed target date fund, or they can choose their own allocation via a suite of mostly passive index funds. And last but not least, we have our Light Point Kingdom K model portfolios, kind of the optional BRI offering for a plan sponsor. And our portfolios consist of 6 risk-based model portfolios, from a conservative 20-80 type allocation to an aggressive almost 100% equity allocation. We also have an allocation as well that's structured just for cash balance plans. So if you have a plan that might benefit from the cash balance plan structure, we can accommodate that within the portfolio, within the Kingdom K as well. So I'm going to talk through a little bit about how we manage these model portfolios, and then I will turn it over from there. So the Beacon Wealth has done biblically responsible investing for over 20 years. And we have an investment committee that governs this process. The investment committee meets regularly to determine our forward-looking portfolio positioning, investment themes. We construct the asset allocation models, and based on our views of the macroeconomy. And we also do the manager due diligence and selection. So you have a team of people that are looking over these actively managed models. And the other thing that's nice about the models is the asset allocation research is supported by Ibbotson Associates. Many of you are probably familiar with Ibbotson. They have over 30 years of experience in independent asset allocation research. And so it's a combination of their research and our own investment committee that, that allows us to create these portfolios for you. Next slide, please. And our portfolios are dynamic in nature, in that we're offering actively managed portfolios. There's a strategic asset allocation with active oversight into some more tactical opportunities that we see. And they also provide access to, it's a multi-tier asset class investing approach. So very broadly diversified across equities, fixed income, and alternative investments. And these are typically rebalanced 4 times a year. When we do make model changes within the Kingdom K offering, we notify the advisors that are using and the plan sponsors that we've made a change as well. So you can always stay up to date as to what we're doing with our portfolios. And finally, I'm just going to talk through a bit of our BRI screening process. So our screening process, and we use a couple of different software programs. The one I have up there as a picture is in Sogo Analytics. And what we do is whenever we're looking to include funds within the Kingdom K platform, we look to include funds that are screened to be biblically responsible, as long as they're fairly economically equivalent to non-screened options, which is what the Department of Labor really requires. So we're looking to screen companies to exclude ownership of companies that are engaged in business and philanthropic activities and activism that run counter to biblical principles. Some examples of this are abortion, pornography, strong advocates of anti-family lifestyles, predatory lending, and also exploitation of human addictions such as alcohol, tobacco, and gambling. And when there are asset classes where there's no investment manager or vehicle that meets the screening standards that are set forth here, we select investment managers for their inclusion in the portfolios on more of a best efforts basis. Because as fiduciaries to the plan, we have to take the best interest of the employees above all else. And so we will we operate the BRI screening on more of a best efforts basis to still provide participants with a very broadly diversified portfolio that still meets return and risk expectations for their given risk tolerance. Next slide, please. And we also like to do the positive side of BRI screening as well. So those of you that receive our blogs know that we do one quite often for companies called Shining Light Companies. And what this means is we proactively seek companies that are trying to be a blessing in the world and operate with integrity and demonstrate strong servant leadership. So we like to have the positive side within the screening as well. So that's a quick overview of the Kingdom K platform. Just to summarize it for you, really a 3-tiered approach where we have participant-directed options that are primarily index funds, which allow participants to have passive management with low expenses if they should choose. We offer qualified default investment alternatives, which are target date funds that are actively managed, whereby the target date funds become more conservative as a participant approaches retirement, giving a more hands-off, actively managed approach to plan participants. And finally, if participants in the plan wants more of a model portfolio approach by a team of investment managers with over 20 years of experience, we have the LightPoint Kingdom K models that are screened to focus on biblical standards for investment. And we also offer the cash balance plan as well, in addition to our 6 risk-based model portfolios. So that's the brief overview, and now I'll turn it over to John Rice.
John, before you jump in, I would like to just build a bridge here between Chad and Hillary and John, and just share my own experience for a moment. You know, so Chad talked about the opportunity, and so as advisors, we say, oh, well, this sounds fantastic. I would like to do this. And then I thought it was important for Hillary to really talk about, you know, how at least the Kingdom K could solve the problems that business owners have. So that all makes a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense to me. And then I found my challenge was, you know, I can ask business owners, what do you like about your plan? What do you not like about your plan? But for me, that's kind of where the conversation stopped. I didn't really know how to engage business owners in a conversation where they, you know, would share frustrations and I could ask more questions and get more information. And so that's why we thought it would be really important to bring John on. He has worked with our team at Beacon to really help us in how you can talk to business owners, where the pain points are, how to have an intelligent conversation about this if this is not something that you do all the time. And that is John's specialty. And so we thank you, John, for joining us today to share your expertise with us.
No, thanks, Cassie, and I appreciate that opportunity. And I think as we think of our title here, so, you know, getting back to prospecting. So as you put it, if Chad set the table, here's where the opportunity is, and Hillary explained the solution. So this is how we can help those business owners. How do we get them talking or thinking about it? So there's kind of 3 ways to prospect plans, and there's very different dynamics to them because different audiences may have a different interpretation. So some of the points that are brought up that I like is identifying risk, because nobody wants additional risk, but at the end of the day, this is their largest portion of investment. So they want to feel good about it, and it could meet their own personal desires, as well as you think about what happened to the industry. Back in '99, nobody had a participant website to look at their retirement plan. And now, if you don't have an app on a phone, participants think, you know, you don't have anything. And by the way, we have an app for the Kingdom K solution. So I think if you're thinking of where the industry started and then progressed all the way through to today, it's kind of interesting to look at 3 main ways to not only solve problems, but really to prospect new opportunities. And one of those is the compliance or plan design, as we like to say. And Hillary referenced the cash balance. So think about a company, and the plan hasn't evolved with the company. So once upon a time, the company was 10 people. They started a plan, but over time, the company grew. So now the company is 80 employees. They have 3 generations of one family as the ownership. So they're looking at succession planning. So really, if you think of that leading question for number 1 of the compliance and plan design, what we're looking for is what changed, and is your retirement plan meeting your needs? In the cash balance world, maybe it's they can't put enough money in the plan to have a meaningful retirement. So can you help us get more money in? And one of the common things is during tax season, they say, you know, I really couldn't put away what I wanted. Or they say, I don't know why, but my provider gave me a refund check. Can you tell me why? So we like to give you kind of those leading questions, or really identifying those flags to say, you know what, I can help you with that. Another one is there's a lot of people that are putting the compression on fees and the conversation, and fees is really the second prospecting idea. But we want to say fees don't have to be 0 or don't have to be the smallest number. In ERISA and where everything lives is a value. So are you getting appropriate value for the fees you pay? It never says you have to be cheapest. So that's a concept that's very different because we're all very fee sensitive. Nobody wants to pay extra. Most importantly, they don't want to pay anything extra to their least favorite Uncle Sam. So they want the tax favored benefits, but they also want something that's a good value. And so if you kind of look at what Hillary went through, there's a good value for somebody that is willing to take on the fiduciary responsibility and mitigate risk out of your company. But the complexity inside retirement plans, that's where fee comparison is very difficult to do, because a lot of the investment providers, they've shifted revenue around. So it gets very, really tedious to dig those numbers out. So we like to help you with that fee comparison as a second idea. And the leading question within that company is to say, when was the last time you benchmarked your fee? So we touched a little bit on fiduciary responsibility to monitor, select and monitor your investments. But when's the last time you benchmarked your plan from a fee to a value scenario? Why don't you let us help you with that? Because we have industry experts that can really dive into those details and analyze it and get it apples to apples so you can make an appropriate decision. And kind of the third one is, one of the ones that Hillary just covered. So how did you select your investments? And very commonly, we hear from companies that, well, we set this up in 2003. Oh, well, how did you select the investments? I don't know, fill in the blank provider just gave them to us. So that's an identification that if you go back to Chad's presentation with the audit, when they come in and ask you for your investment policy statement and how you're selecting and monitoring your investments, there's a very good picture of, if you don't have a prudent process, maybe it's time to review. So these three items are different ways to go into the data and, kind of lead them down a discussion. And where I think the real prospecting idea is, it gets you into a meaningful conversation beyond what Cassie just said. What do you like and what do you dislike? Now, I love those two questions, because it's almost as important. If somebody says, you know what, I really like that I have my value-based investment in my plan, I just don't like that I am missing ABC, or I get a refund, or I would love to put more money in. So those are kind of our three highlights and kind of the three paths we're going to go. And if we go to the next slide, we really get into the type of data that you have. So one of the things we can do for you in your prospecting efforts is, there's a lot of information in the public domain. So the Form 5500 that you have to file on all qualified plans is a matter of public record. So we have the ability to pull a list of 5500s for your geographic area and help you with some of the flags that we would see in there. Maybe it is the employer is able to put more contributions in than the employee. So we go down the path of plan design, cash balance. Maybe it's something where you identify funds in the plan that have fallen out of favor, so it needs that investment review. Or simply, the providers that it's with, and it's designed to be a startup, and it's grown to $5 million in plan assets. So maybe it's outgrown its fee structure, and it's time to really take a look at that and see if there's maybe some sharpening of the pencil that should have been done. The other information you have is non-public data, but not necessarily confidential. So a good example of this are the plan documents. So the plan document dictates what's going on within the plan. The investment policy statement, it's not confidential. It doesn't have anybody's social security number or any protected information. It's just non-public because it's strictly to the plan. So asking for a copy of fee disclosure documentation or the investment policy statement of the plan document, there's no confidential information in there. It can get into a further conversation. And then the last one is the confidential data. So if you were to do a cash balance or a plan design illustration, unfortunately, we do have to have the birth dates and the hire dates of the employees so that we can really show how we can change the plan provisions and illustrate the benefits to the owners or to the company. So I think knowing the three different types of data and feeling comfortable asking for non-public data that doesn't have the confidential information. So that plan level. If we go to the next slide there, we'll dive into specifically the Form 5500. So the Form 5500 kind of looks like a tax return. It's not. It's an informational return to the Department of Labor and to the IRS. And really what it's saying is that we did X, Y, and Z for our retirement plan. And unfortunately, the Department of Labor and the IRS gives us a lot of different codes, but we can help you translate that information to help you understand what's going on with the plan. Short form versus an audit plan, meaning under 100 participants, over 100 participants. Maybe it's a different plan provision. So what does this mean for this company? You know, within the databases that take that 5500 data, they'll actually identify issues within plans. And one of those very commonly is plans have to have a fidelity bond for the assets. Well, if you sign a 5500 but you don't have a fidelity bond, that's a simple red flag to say this plan needs a fidelity bond. Well, that can be a conversation starter, and that's some of the things that Cassie will provide is different things to look out for within. And the last thing that I always preach on the public data is go look at the company's website, because you find a lot of interesting items there. Some of that could be succession planning. So when you see that the parents are passing the company to the children, and maybe he or she was the controller before, but now they've ascended to take the president. Whenever a company is going through that succession planning, that is a great time to review the plan provisions to make sure it still meets their needs. And it may be time to make some changes to best represent those participants. On the next slide, one of the things that we like to get into are fee disclosure, and we're going to show a side-by-side comparison. You have plan and participant fee disclosure documents, and they don't have confidential information. So we like to take a look at that because it'll tell us where some of those asset-based fees are that maybe the plan has outgrown. And then the other item is if you're doing any type of compliance review, the plan documents are necessary. It tells you the provisions of what they have today and can help us explain what their options going forward. And then one of the things that I always like to point out are the plan level trust statement. So think of it as the list of the funds and their balance at quarter end or year end. And the importance of that is to see what they have as investments, to really kind of take a look at, okay, if you see something that's a little bit out of kilter, maybe that's something that we need to talk about, or even looking at the share class so you can get the fees related to that. And then participant notices are kind of nice because, like Hillary uses the QDIA, the Qualified Default Investment Alternative, as an example. There's a QDIA notice that has to go out to the participants. So if the notices are missing or they're not comfortable with the notices, maybe there's a way to review those to help them understand what their obligations are. Moving to the next slide, just briefly, when you get into plan design, you will ask for a census, and we have a great way of passing that information to us behind a secure email or secure server, and that's very important. One of the things that we want to, if you do go through plan design with us, is just make sure we don't have socials on there. We don't need social security numbers until we move forward on a plan. We do have to have them then for tax treatment purposes, distributions, and the like. But just making sure that you remove any of that confidential information. And we don't even need names within the data. It can be owner number 1, owner number 2, and then participant 1, participant 2, from that scenario. But one of the things that you can do is back to that test or failures. If they don't feel that the plan is operating optimally, and they could come up with they got a refund, or their CPA said they can't get enough money into the plan, maybe they should look at alternative structures. Those are things that get very complicated, so we don't want to dive too far into the details, but we want you to know that we have lots of pension consultants and even actuaries on staff that they love to get into the details, and we'll even make sure we help you all the way through with that presentation, because solving that problem can be very important. But if you gather all this information, what do you do with it? So that's what I kind of get as the the real next question. And so whether you're getting fee disclosure documents or the investment process, or maybe even this confidential census information, Kathy, I'll pass it back to you. What do we do with that with a Kingdom K solution?
So after we get this information, and I'm going to give you a list at the end of the information that we need, we can pull all the information out of these documents. So you're requesting these plan documents, but you don't really have to do much with them, but send them on to us, and we can create a fee comparison. So I have a company here, ABC Financial, and compared to the Kingdom K, and this is really helpful for a plan owner to take a look at and see how the fees compare. Oh, I am pulling some stuff up on my side that's blocking my numbers. So hold on one second. There we go. Okay, so you can see in this plan, it's a $500,000 plan. There's 6 participants with an average account balance of $83,000. So we were able to pull out of this document how much they were paying for the fees throughout the plan, put a side by side with the Kingdom K. And you can see at this level that the net plan cost that they have right now is $8,758 a year. Kingdom K, $6,810. Now that might not seem like a huge difference, it's a couple $1,000s, but we were able to show with this plan that over time, as the plan gets bigger, that's the nice thing about 401k plans, right? Everybody's consistently contributing, the employers and the employees. As the plan got bigger and bigger, the cost savings also got bigger and bigger. And also, I would draw your attention to the fees here, the average expense ratio, they're paying 1.48% here, and on the Kingdom K side, 0.537. So I'm not saying that the Kingdom K will always be a cheaper option, but this is a great educational point. Chad brought this up before. The plan sponsors don't really understand always what they are paying in their plans. And so you have really brought some great value to them to help them to understand how much they are currently paying. And if it's fantastic, then you can tell them that it's fantastic, and then they can feel good about that. But it gives plan owners a real concrete piece of information. And so we create this for you. Okay. Then, in terms of the plan design, I'm going to, John, let you talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, you know, taking a company that wanted to pay less to their least favorite Uncle Sam. And so what we did is we took what they're doing today and saying, okay, well, let's see how much we can shelter, and allow us to, you know, new comparability is a term to enhance the profit sharing. So it allows you to use certain factors of age as you approach retirement to really get more money into the plan. And then adding a cash balance plan above and beyond that. So a cash balance is a hybrid plan. It's really a defined benefit plan, but it pairs well with a profit sharing. So if you think of it, you can take individuals and shelter even more money. So as they're getting the money out of the corporation, they could do one or two things. Maybe it brings them below the QDIA, or the qualified business income threshold. So now they can take that new deduction that came with tax reform. Or maybe even it's just sheltering money out of the corporation, which, back to that fiduciary risk, one of the best things is when you get the money out of the corporation and into the trust, you're segregating it from you know, anybody coming in as creditors or even in lawsuits and the items, because you're actually segregating those assets from your employer. So a lot of people, when they look at, you know, their entire wealth, they do want them in trust assets rather than employer assets that are subject to the going concern within the business. So this is just kind of showing a snapshot of the output. And this is with a cash balance. It just happens to be a picture perfect one. What our goal is in all of this is the very bottom line, which is the percentage. How much of the total dollars contributed do we get to the owners? And classified in here, it's highly compensated employees. And in this example, we were able to get 95% of total dollars to the owners and the family for the corporation. So That's a win scenario. And the best part about this is because of the Kingdom K solution is all of this is under the fiduciary process. So both the cash balance and the 401k profit sharing plans are covered by the fiduciary protection, making it easy for advisors.
Great. Thank you, John. The third thing we have is a sample side-by-side comparison. I'm going to ask Chad to speak to this for a minute. This was really Chad's idea that he brought to us, and it has been so helpful for me when I am talking to advisors who are going to present the plan or to plan owners themselves, because it's really a high-level summary. So Chad, will you talk us through this?
Sure, Cassie, and that's exactly what I would say. I mean, the intention here is to be able to zoom out and take a 30,000-foot view of the plan, because the details are really important. And so you just saw, as Cassie and John showed, a sample fee comparison, sample plan design, and that really gets into the nuts and bolts of costs and all these different quantitative data and analysis. What this allows to do, it really works well and complements that well, because it's a one-page qualitative report. And sometimes it's nice to have just an executive summary for clients that shows them on one page. Here are the ways in which we think the Kingdom K plan may be able to help you. Now, in this case, you'll see down at the bottom portion of this page, it highlights fees, investments, and income taxes. Those are not always the categories. Sometimes it's about motivating and retaining key employees and how they do that well. It may be about educating employees and providing them financial education. We've got a lot of great ways to do that online. It may be around reducing fiduciary responsibility, reducing their liability, as we talked about earlier. So whatever those things are, we're going to highlight those and summarize them. And then, of course, the top portion of this is just the side-by-side. Here's your current plan, here's the Kingdom K, and in 7 different areas we're going to look at and show potentially some areas where you may be deficient in your current plan and you may want to look to make a change. So it creates awareness and is a nice synopsis.
Great. Thank you. So yeah, that's really your talking points when you are presenting this to the plan owner. And so when I think about this whole package and these deliverables, this is kind of a done-for-you solution. So we really built this with the advisor in mind, as Chad said, who doesn't do this all the time, but we want to make it easy for you. We want to give you an opportunity to explore this with your clients when it may not have been an option for you in the past. So next steps, if you are thinking about, hey, I would like to do this with a plan, the first thing I would say to do, as John talked about, is look up the Form 5500. That's public data. You can look at the name of the plan, see how much they have already saved in there, how many participants. So those first three bullets you can get right off the Form 5500. If you need help with that, we are happy to do that. But in our case, we can say, oh, I know this person in my community, they're a Christian business owner, that's somebody I would like to be doing business with. Let me look up and learn a little bit about their plan, and that can give you some ideas to start to talk with them about. The other things that John mentioned, if we're going to do a side-by-side analysis, we need a current list of funds with the tickers and the balance, and that comes from the quarterly trust statement. We need fee disclosure documents. There's 2 of those, plan level and participant level, and that's where we find out where all the fees are. And then for you as the advisor, if we would need to know what you plan to charge as the advisor so that we can add that into the fee analysis. And you certainly do have some say over that. And if you need guidance, we're happy to give you some guidelines around that. But with that information, we can create this side-by-side analysis. I will tell you just from my experience that plan owners don't always know where all these documents are, but there is somebody that should know where they are. So it may not be the plan owner. You may have to talk to someone else within the company that can help you to get those documents. But once you have those, we really can start to build a story for you to plan, to present to the plan owner.
Just a comment on the fee disclosure documents. If they can't put their hands on them, back to Chad's comment about the audit that the DOL or the IRS could do, those would be documents they would expect to be in your fiduciary file.
Mm-hmm.
So by going through this exercise, you're helping them refresh their fiduciary file or make sure they have necessary documentation at hand.
So that was a lot of information that we presented all together, all at once. So this is what I will share with you. This is my contact information, my phone number, my email. We also have a website, kingdomk.com. There's some videos there. There's also different tools for business owners. So that's a really great starting off place. And if you want to contact me and want to start talking through some plans together, I'm happy to do that. And especially the first couple, it feels like you need some help, we're happy to do that for you. I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. Many thanks to Chad and Hillary and John for sharing their expertise. And if there is anything that we can do to help you to serve your Christian business owner clients, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thanks so much for joining us.